Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth and final episode of SiteSell Presents. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and today we're talking about the power and intricacies of search. Search, specifically Google search, has continued to change and evolve, seemingly on an hourly basis. And we're going to explore where search is headed and how businesses can adapt. And you're in for a real treat, as today's guests are three of the top experts in this area. I'll introduce each and then we'll get into some questions for the panel. But before I do, I want to remind all of you once more that if you're watching live, you can leave a comment with a question in the event page and we'll try to get to it during the show. With that, let's say hello to our guests. David Amerland is a professional advisor to companies globally. He blogs for a number of websites including Forbes, journalism.co.uk, and Social Media Today, and he writes for magazines and newspapers. He explores the implications of semantic technology in daily life. Hello, David, and welcome to the show.
Mike, hi, and I'm really happy to be here with the guests you have lined up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we have Martin Shervington. He's a speaker, consultant, author, professional coach, and marketing psychologist. He's written several books and leads a thriving Google Plus community and consulting service, Plus Your Business. Hello, Martin, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Michael.
Thanks so much.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here with David and Mark. It's a trio, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And finally, we have Mark Traphagen. He is the Senior Director of Online Marketing for Stone Temple Consulting. His mission is to help businesses get seen and heard, to get their message out, and bring in people who want and need what they have to offer. His special know-how is in the intersection of social and search. Hello, Mark, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. And like the others have said, this is kind of a Google Plus reunion here. Love being with these guys anytime, any excuse.
Awesome. I appreciate all three of you coming. So first, I think it would be great if you each took a moment to share with us a little bit more about yourselves. You know, what your background is, and we will start with David.
Okay. Easy things first. I write books about search and marketing. I write articles in online sites like Forbes, again on the same subjects, but I also advise a number of Fortune 500 companies on their social media and search. So I sort of bring all those things together in a very sort of hopefully practical way.
Great. Martin, can you share a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so my postgrad was in organizational psychology, and I spent the last 3 years really around the Google ecosystem. A lot around Google Plus, now a lot on Google My Business, and with a strong focus on reviews and local search. And that's been a project now for the last however many months. Do you want more? I don't know. I'll stop there.
Sure. No.
I'm sure I'll say more as we go. But you know what? It's like I tend to be looking at what you can be using social for, how you can build communities around content that leverages it into search. And I think that's something that probably formulated over the past few years that a lot of people are using, which is methods of getting engagement up and, say, community building.
Great, great. And before we go to Mark, I want to share this comment from Ray Hiltz. He says, wow, it's like the Google Plus Holy Trinity.
Oh, be prepared to be disappointed if you're...
Great. And Mark?
Yeah, well, I have that super meta job of marketing a marketing agency. I'm basically the marketing director for Stone Temple Consulting, which is about a 50-employee digital marketing agency. We deal with the Fortune 500 clients that David Amerland has left us, the few he leaves behind. We pick up his droppings. No, we do. We are historically an SEO agency that has evolved into an agency much more centered around content marketing, but still with that technical SEO savvy. So that's where we specialize.
That's fantastic. So now I think it'd probably be a good idea if we kind of brought everyone in the audience up to speed on current terminology and trends. So if the three of you could help us understand what are things like semantic search, social search, and where's Google headed?
Okay, I'll sort of kick it off, and I think both Martin and Mark are going to be able to add a lot of detail here. So let's draw a very big, broad picture here. How has search changed over the last 2-3 years? And it's changed dramatically, and it's changed a lot. Now, essentially, search used to be something which was highly technical in terms of what we did on the site itself, and it was intended to help Google find it and then statistically present the results in a sort of certain order, which allowed somebody to find the relevant, to sift through them and find the relevant answer. So in that world, there were two things. There was an uncertainty in terms of what the correct answer would be, and Google used to rank sites in terms of that uncertainty from top to bottom. And there was also an uncertainty whether even within the ranked sites, there was the result you were looking for. You had to do the hard work as a person. The reason all this happened is because Google didn't really understand the language you used, it didn't understand the intent behind the search, and it had no way of understanding what you were actually looking for beyond your search query. And all this has changed now. We're in a, forget semantic search, we're in a fully semantic technology world. And what that means essentially is that the data which surrounds us, the data which we generate, the data which we're embedded in, essentially constantly connects, and from that connection we get constant refinement of meaning and purpose. So, for instance, if we forget that we're talking about digital and we think how we operate in the real world, if you think about the relationships we have with the people around you, they're in a constant state of flux. And flux in terms of what they do, what they say, how they say it, what you say, what you said, what happened, what you hope will happen. So all these are constantly recalculated on a daily, hourly basis within the work environment. The same thing is now happening algorithmically in search. And not only in search, but also through our devices and the connections we make, through the data we generate, and all that is pulled together in the search interface for our own purposes here, every time we actually look for something. Is it perfect? Far from it. It's a huge task. There are huge holes in it still, but they're constantly being filled in. It's getting better and better every day, and we're seeing a change in direction of optimization of websites, which now have to deliver value, they have to deliver uniqueness in style and voice rather than just content. And also they have to have a very strong social component because of that. And I will leave it here because obviously Martin and Mark have very important insights on both these things.
I thought we'd just leave David talk for the whole time because he's got it covered, hasn't he? That's right.
Martin and I could just nod our heads.
Yeah. I make notes when I'm with David. Do you know? That's nice. That's nice. Shall I dive in a little bit on the social side? You mentioned about social SEO, and then pass it over to Mark. So what David's saying is that the activities that you take, and the next bit is the people who are connected with you, the people who are engaging with you around your content, starts to signal to Google something. And that something is going to be dependent upon the person, the people, kids screaming, and the nature of the content itself. And when it comes to search, if we look at an example of a blog post, and some people think that just posting onto Google Plus in its own right, without any engagement at all, gets it ranked and gives a good chance of it getting to appear on the first page and all these things. And you hear these things. There's an opportunity to think about this differently in terms of social and the relationship with search. When a person who is in your network engages on your content, the potential for people to see that content that are in their network increases. So that either increases through spreading in social. The +1 recommend button, for instance, on Google Plus, spreads it socially. We know the same if you just look at this for spread in Facebook, but it spreads it socially. When somebody likes something, you see it in the time, in the little ticker timer and all of this sort of stuff. And that's social, so it spreads the information. Now, with Google and Google Plus, because Google sits on top as a search engine, on top of Google Plus, we have personalized search. So when I search for something that is semantic search, let's say David's in my network, in fact it's likely David would appear for most people, but the likelihood of a post coming up from David with his face next to it, which is a Google Plus post, that's the only way the face is going to appear, is very high. That's a personalized search result. So social SEO, David is influencing my search results because I have him in my circles. Okay, but The stage after that is very much when you go beyond the social and you start to go to the realm of authority. What is the most authoritative content? What's the most relevant, and I know we're going to get into the semantics around this, but relevant content for somebody to see outside of anyone's network? In other words, that first page of Google, top 2, top 3, top 5 slots in particular, when you're doing an incognito search. And what we found is that through the social engagement, you don't just get the spread, you don't just get the connections, you don't just build the relationships, even though that's incredibly important, but you also find that this content surfaces longer term in these incognito results, because these posts are deemed to be authoritative by the algorithm based upon the people who are engaging from within your network. So if I post something on semantic search and a real niche topic, and David and Mark and Eric and yourself, Mike, and everybody engages, the likelihood that the algorithm sees that as an important post because they've put their name to it, that they clicked a button that adds their face next to it, and they share it to the network as well. All of that creates some sort of link structure, which you're going to look at in the background. But more importantly, it just says, hey, this is important for people to see based upon the authorities that are already in that space. And it surfaces. And we've tested this now for years, and we can see that community building leads to search results.
Yep.
That's my little take on social SEO.
Brilliant.
Right. Great. I'm going to bring in the third leg here, I hope. David gave a great overview of what semantic search means in the semantic web world that we're living in. Martin brought in the social component and how important that is, and I very much agree with that. I want to bring it in from the perspective of your website. Your home base, your site, still a very important place for you, but it's changed in its meaning over the years. And David alluded to this a little bit. You know, it used to be the main task for a site was just to be well optimized, to try to have the right words in the right place, to get Google to think that you were relevant for a certain term, and then you hope that you ranked for it and you try to get links to that. It's gotten, at the same time, much more complex, but also somewhat delightfully much more human, and I think much more real in some context. And what I want to bring into this is the aspect also of real user engagement and what real users are doing with your site and the growing importance of this. So, well, you have to have content that's semantically rich and semantically relevant, as David said. You've got to be building a social network. You've got to be building an audience out there that loves what you do and shares it, and that attracts relevant, authoritative people who share it and promote it, sending those relevant signals to it. But you also have to have, more than ever, a site that is truly useful to real people for what you're about. And we're seeing evidence of Google paying more and more attention to those kinds of signals. When people go from a Google search result to your site, what do? Do they bounce right back to the results and go looking for another result, click on another result? That's really bad in most cases. Depends on the circumstance. But many other signals, basically, it all works together in this wonderful web. All the things that the three of us are talking about are so interrelated and cooperative that it's actually getting harder and harder to talk about specifically about any one signal. These things all work together. So you want to be building a website that is the best possible resource for whatever you're about, whatever your topic is, whatever your product is, whatever your cause is. It's the best resource on the web for that. It's the one that people are going to go to, they're going to read, they're going to say, this is what I was looking for. And they're going to share that with their friends, and they're going to go to more pages on your site. And they're going to come back again and again. Because all of those things create an atmosphere where you will be creating all the other signals that we're talking about. This all works together interdependently. But so, the good news is, we're still far from perfect on this, as David said, but the good news is that all these things that Google is trying to build into their algorithm are leading us more and more toward the web that we all really want out of search. What we want is, we want to get the answers to our questions. We want to get informed. We want to find out what's the best of whatever we're looking for. And that's always been Google's mission, to uncover that. Now, the one other thing I'll throw in here before I quit is, we've all mentioned a little bit personalization, but it's personalization and customization now. We're seeing more and more of this, where for more and more queries, when you go on Google, you very rarely now see just the old traditional 10 blue links, but you'll see all kinds of other information. Some of it not directly from websites, some of it directly from Google, or Google taking information from your site and putting it up in a box where people may or may not need to click any further to get their answer. So it's all getting a lot more complicated, and you've got to be doing a better job of being a resource than ever before. I'll stop there.
Good point.
No, that was great, and it's interesting that you mentioned that search is moving to a web, and websites are moving to a web that is more like what we want and what we envision. Because a lot of people would have a little angst about what changes Google implements and requires, like with mobile readiness, but some people see it as Google pushing us and pulling us into those kinds of directions. Last week we read about the release of Google's latest Panda update 4.2, and of course earlier this year we were all in the throes of trying to deal with Mobilegeddon. So what are some of the strategies and recommendations that businesses can employ to keep ahead of these changes to search?
Okay. First of all, this is a question that always comes up, and it comes up in various guises. And essentially, when it boils down to is, what should I do very quickly to actually get the best results possible? So we're looking for shortcuts. And the big difference in the search world we're in now and the web that is being created is that there are no shortcuts. That doesn't mean there are no answers to the question. On the contrary, there are actually answers which lead us back to basics. So the question is, what do you do to make your business the best it can be and the most relevant it can be to the target audience? And if you can correctly answer that, then the challenge becomes, how do you then translate that into a digital medium? How do you translate to your website? How do you translate to the mobile experience of your customers, or the tablet experience, which is partially different? How do you translate in the way that they will actually experience the content they will find on the web, so it actually meets your business principles, your business goals, your business criteria? And this is the thinking that comes in. And for anybody who's been following Stone Temple Consulting posts over the last 24 months, they've done a lot of research on this. They have consistently pointed people in a direction where we're not looking for a specific strategy, but we're looking for an overall content creation strategy that reflects the core business values of a particular business. And Mark will be able to elaborate on this, but essentially these are the questions which will give you the answers you need.
Yeah, there are still technical things you need to do, and I've been a little disturbed by some articles I've seen recently that it's not quite the SEO is dead that we meme that we were seeing maybe a year ago or so, but it's kind of the next evolution of that, where people are saying, like, well, content is so important now that you can just ignore SEO, traditional SEO, and I don't at all think that's true. I don't think anybody here thinks that's true. David said it well, that there are no shortcuts. There are still things that it's good to do, and Mike, you brought up one, the so-called Mobilegeddon, which everybody I know at Google cringes every time we use that. They said, no, it was the mobile-friendly update. But our testing showed that it did have an effect, and most of the effect was negative, not positive. In other words, sites that were already mobile-friendly didn't really get much of a boost, which is where most people were looking. But we saw a lot of sites who were not mobile-ready lose rankings after the mobile update back in April and May. So that's something again, increasingly as your audience is going to be using mobile devices, that's something you can't afford to not pay attention to. Sorry for the double negative there. And that takes a certain amount of technical expertise. At some point, if you're serious about your site and about doing well and being found, you need to bite that bullet and get some help with that. It doesn't necessarily take a lot, depending on what you're doing, but somebody who knows what they're doing to help you basically get things set up correctly from a technical aspect. But once you've got that in place, and it does take some maintenance ongoingly, but once you've got that going, as David said, the real important, we've been saying this whole broadcast so far, the very most important thing is not to concentrate on any tricks or shortcuts, but to concentrate on your end user, who they are, who your audience is, and thinking about how can my site and my content, both on my site, on other sites, and in social media, be the very best in my topic area for those people.
Shall I add as well, Mark, about local? That's it. Mike's just sitting there. He's just like going, "Jed, you just talk those three." Local and mobile. I think one of the big steps for people to take is to look at, as you say, Mark, look at the person who is finding the piece of information and what action they take from there. What context are they in? Did they put something into search? In which case, what device? Do they follow you on social? Do they have notifications? I'm obsessed by notifications at the minute. I've got some more stuff coming out, because if you can get people's attention, then you have some push notifications, so you don't have to leave it for them to find the information. So it's okay. Notifications are almost the new email opt-in list for some people, particularly if you have your own app. That's for another day. Local. Mobile searches on local, so for local restaurants and bars and near me. But Mark, we've talked about this for a while. It radically changes the results that you get based upon where you are. And when you start to take into account Google Now as well as an app, and you get in suggestions of different restaurants and different pieces of information, you start to build a map. And the map is different to your website alone. Your website, as Mark says, home base. But you have all of these places that people can find it. And it's not just in search. And I say these social notifications and people sharing it, and plus all of that stuff, all of that reaches out beyond. But you need a map. And you've got to create a map to understand, and then you've got to start tracking. You've got to start looking at which bits aren't working and start to optimize, which is why obviously with mobile-friendly sites, particularly if you take restaurants and things, so many of them will have lost because they're not mobile-friendly. It's a huge space, and I think that's one of the challenges, is knowing how to navigate it. What do you need to focus on? Because the tendency is to chuck the site up, to put a bit of content, and fingers crossed and hope for the best that the social is going to work. And I think that there's steps and stages for businesses to put a plan into place that allows it to be, I have to say, a year, 2 year, 3 year plan. Otherwise, use AdWords. And just get the traffic to the site by paying for it, and improve the conversion rates and go from there. Social should be used once you've ideally got evidence that people want to buy the thing that you're selling. And I think AdWords is a really, really powerful way to kick that off.
That's great point. So when it comes to implementing these strategies, what tools and services do you guys use and recommend? And I'll say, feel free to insert an unabashed personal plug at this point if it's relevant.
Okay, that's a good question. Now, in terms of managing the social side, there are a whole lot of tools out there, including Hootsuite, for instance, for sharing content across social media platforms. There's Buffer, which allows you to essentially bring in your content and stagger the timing of it, so you don't just flood everybody the moment you get online, then have an 8-hour gap while you're doing other things. And there's also a question of at which point do you do things yourself, and at which point do you go to an agency. Now, I must say here that I think we're getting to the stage where search engine optimization itself, because it's so diffuse now, and it's so complex, and it changes so quickly, really needs to be done by a professional for you, which does not absolve you, however, from the need to understand what is actually being done. Mark mentioned how important the technical aspect is. It continues to be so. And things are constantly evolving. So essentially, when you hire a professional now, it is different to when you hired a professional 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when you hired somebody for a month to SEO your site and then they went away until you needed them again. Now, when you actually call in a professional, you are embedding within your business the expertise and the skill set which you don't have the time to develop internally. So you know what you're buying. The professional will take time and effort to actually understand what your business does. So there's a relationship there which is long-term, because both parties need to actually work. And Martin mentioned a 2-3 year plan. Well, search engine optimization now and visibility in search and across all the different devices does need to be a long-term thing. You need to plan for it. It won't happen overnight. You will not be on the first page of Google tomorrow just because you hired somebody. Which means that if you want shortcuts, yes, you have to pay for it. Go and get AdWords. That'll give you the traffic, and then you can work on conversions because there are problems there. You get people, but they don't convert. And then work out your long-term strategy, which will give you organic growth. And these are the things you need to bear in mind now when you're making your purchasing decisions in terms of the tools and the services which you need to access.
Shall I add in a local, again, current obsession, obviously,
Yes.
and a bit of the shameless plug bit, reviews. If you've got a local business, got to focus on reviews, not just the social proof in search, which it can appear in your AdWords, that you can have your Google seller ratings, but you can also have stars that appear in organic search. You want to check that out, that's a big, big thing. But you can include the reviews on your website as well. And there's some people that are suggesting that the increased amount of trust is leading to increased conversions. So you start to see this as a part of your exposure. So people see it, they click, and then they have increased trust again. So very much as David is the one that talks about trust being, we've been posting about this, right? One of the utmost things. Reviews help to improve trust. Get more reviews. Lots more content coming out on that, but I won't problem. Wow.
Yeah, we're kind of leaving the local to Martin here, which is great. I'm glad he's covering that because it's very important. I'm sure it's very important to many of the people who are watching this broadcast. But just to underscore what Martin was saying, just as a personal anecdote, the guys in the broadcast here know that I was on the road for the last 3 weeks. Just got home 2 days ago for the first time in 3 weeks, traveling a lot. And while I was traveling, it was a great experience because that time I was very much a consumer of the local. I went through 4 different cities in those 3 weeks, and well, really more than that, but 4 different major locations. And the reviews I realized were critically important to my decisions. That's where, when it came down to it, I was looking for a restaurant in the evening or a bar to go to, or any kind of business when I was locally. Their websites all say the same thing. They all say they're great. Their AdWords ads all say they're great. But the critical thing for me in making a decision was digging down into the reviews and seeing what real people had to say. So I just want to underscore the importance of that if you're a local business in particular. Since the question was about tools and those sorts of things, there's so many. We, Stone Temple, more and more we're using in-house. We're developing our own tools. We have a team of developers, and we're working on a number of tools of our own, which our clients get the advantage of. But there's a lot of things I could mention. I'll just mention one more in the social realm that probably a lot of people are familiar with, but if you're not, you should really look into it, particularly from the content side, and that is BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo is a very easy-to-use tool that basically you can look at from a number of different angles. You can look up a topic, a subject, a keyword. You can look up a particular site. You can look at authors, and you can see basically the most popular socially shared content on that topic or from that site or from that author. And that can be great for research. That can be great for competitive research. What are your competitors doing in the content area and how are people responding to it? What's resonating? It can be great for new content ideas. I go to it a lot for that. I look at it and say, okay, in this topic, what are the most popular things that have been written on this topic from a social share standpoint? And then my goal is not to imitate those, because if they're so popular, it's definitely going to compete directly with them. But look at them and say, is there an angle that they haven't covered? Is there something about that particular angle that they took that I could expand upon or use in a new way? So I'll just mention that as one tool that you can use in a lot of different ways to help you produce better content and do better with your social audience.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation, Mark. I mean, that could have applied to any one of our previous shows. That's great for blogging. That's great for creating social content. So yeah, BuzzSumo. I can't talk today. It's a great idea, and I agree. I was watching you in Alaska, and what a great time you were having, and secretly hoping that you wouldn't have too good a time, that you wouldn't come home, because you did suggest that you might stay there. I didn't want you to miss this show.
Yeah, there's any place in the world that would tempt me, it would be there. But of course, as people keep reminding me, I haven't spent a winter there yet. So maybe I do that and it'll cure me.
It's a little different. So we do have a question from our friend Scott Scowcroft, who says, any updates or new thinking in terms of the social use of video? Any rules of thumb, anything new in terms of video and mobile?
Yes. Yes and yes. I mean, I'm not sure if it's an update on the new thinking, but essentially we're in the throes of the visual web. Better devices, higher computing power, greater bandwidth and connectivity all are contributing to the increased use of multimedia. And this allows us to achieve perhaps the only viable shortcut we can have on the web, which is how to actually determine trust, which Martin said. And it's a very human quality. It can be done without video. It takes a long time, but it can also be done very quickly through video by actually establishing a visual frame of reference with somebody, which allows you to feel the human connection and actually say, yes, I like them, no, I don't. Yes, I trust them, no, I don't, based on the non-verbal cues that you actually see. And that's the way we've always operated. So video is becoming an incredibly important part of marketing because it helps to establish that one-to-one connection that Mark was talking about, where you essentially need to build a relationship with your audience. You're not going to do it through mass marketing. You're not going to do it by advertising. You need to actually connect with them in terms of who you are, how you do things, the values which you share, the values you project, and how you can help them on that sort of shared connection basis. And video plays an important part in this.
Can I just add in something that's emerging? Because I'm just outside Silicon Valley, and we've had access to the Android TV device from NVIDIA, Shield device. And what I say to Scott is Sony's looking at 50 million Android TV units coming out by the end of the year. Android TV is Google in the home. And if you're looking at videos, you need to see that the interface, and there's other devices you can get it on, but the interface is different. It's not mobile, it's not desktop, it's very different. For videos, there are no annotations to click, and we know that annotations have been sort of downgraded, and we've now got the cards. So that's, we can see it's going, okay, but there's nothing to click. There's no description, so there's no links to click. So if you're looking at video, and is likely to get surfaced in search, or it's an app or anything like that, but that's another day. If it's a video and it could be played on Android TV, then you need to think of call to action at the end of it that isn't click here, because it's a different way of people receiving it. They've got a mobile, they've got a controller, or they've got an iPad or something like that. Tracker. It's again different. I think that as a marketer, being aware that this is something that's moving on the horizon, because there's a battle for the home, and the home's going to be between Apple and Google, but it's Android. I think this is one of the key things for people to see. Android as a platform is huge. So I'd also go back to look at what people are doing on the mobile device, iPhone or where are they watching the videos? Are they watching it natively in Facebook? Because I know if you listen to everybody, you want to upload your videos as well if you want extra traction that's appropriate for that audience onto the platform. But if they're watching it on the mobile, what are you doing? What size is it? What's it look like? Do you know what? I couldn't turn the phone all the way around. That was a bit weird. But what is it like? What's going on? What's the emotional response? When it's tiny, are your graphics too small? All of these things are understanding the context in which the information is being engaged with, consumed. So, and also if you ask for a thumbs up, you see it on the phone. You don't see it on an Android TV. It's going to be really interesting because it's different psychology.
That was so. That's so brilliant what Martin just shared, and very, very important for people to be paying
attention. That's why I love you guys. See, that's why I come here.
Just to get personal affirmation.
Yeah. I haven't seen you for ages. Keep it coming.
Yeah, okay. And he's so devilishly handsome, don't you think, folks? Too.
Absolutely.
No, it truly is. It truly is what you need to be paying attention to. I think we're seeing this, and Facebook was the first to train us for this at Stone Temple. We do a lot of videos. We have a video studio now. We produce a lot of in-house short-form videos, and we were optimizing them for YouTube, which means we were thinking about the click. We were doing the annotations, thinking all that way, and Facebook forced us to think differently because with the Facebook video, we began experimenting with that, and now we've been experimenting with the embedded videos, actually, uploading directly to Facebook and getting pretty good results with that. But you can't, there's nothing to click on, as Martin said. And so you've got to think differently. Now, we've been kind of crudely experimenting just with putting up a short link visually on the screen and saying, you want more of this content, go to that link, seeing what we get with that. But we're already thinking bigger than that. And we've got to think like your video has to be serving a different purpose than just getting the click to something. So it really is shifting the whole strategy. I think that's very important.
Have you thought of, and I'm checking this out there, and this is something that I think is where it needs to go possibly, is shortcodes. Text shortcode to something like, what is the outcome you're seeking? And then what is the easiest, least painful way for people to achieve that, or to take that step to achieve that outcome? And I think it's looking at, could it be that you basically text? Or is it that this is the website address, as you say, Mark? And what is it then? Is there an incentive to do that? What is it? Sign up for the free, what have you? And I think we've got to take a step back and realize that the funny thing is, we're not even talking about only other platforms. It's YouTube itself. We're going to have to be thinking about this because of Android TV.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to get a lot more creative. That was one of the things that I came away with and just went, yeah, is a website address enough? Or do we start getting more creative?
Yeah, Jeff C's been using that with his Mainly Pinterest Tips podcast. At the end of the podcast, he gives them, a short 5-digit code and a number to text it to, so that they can sign up for his newsletter.
It's great.
Great. Well, let's shift gears for a minute and let's talk about what's not a good idea when it comes to search and optimization. What are some of the myths or the no longer true techniques that online businesses should avoid?
Well, any kind of offer that offers to sell you links, and these still keep on coming, and you're tempted to think, well, may as well try it. The answer to that is don't. You will really seriously get burned. Anything which sounds like a good way to game search by getting your buddies together and thinking, well, I've got about 1,000 friends. If we get together on Google Plus and Facebook and start, going around robbing some of my content, it's bound to do well in search. Again, don't. And the reason for that is that it's an entirely transparent web. Now Google has a signature of an organic profile. They understand, like they have a signature of an organic website. They understand exactly how that profile behaves. So if you get your 1,000 friends to actually do this, well, you may have a little bit of short-lived success. By the time you get to post number 3, you begin to drop, and by the time you get to post number 10, you may even get a Google warning that you're doing things wrong. So these things shouldn't happen. You focus on actually getting all that energy and that creativity into really delivering great value to your audience, and then think, how are you going to actually make the things which matter to them visible? How are you going to make things which matter to you in your business visible to them? And this is exactly where we get the interface of psychology, search engine optimization, search marketing, and content creation and content marketing. These are all the things which become now a very organic, holistic whole, which projects the personality and the voice of the business. And that's the thing, avoid the shortcuts, avoid the temptations. Do things the hard way because it actually works.
And it's relationships, David, isn't it? I mean, that's what we come down to. Yeah, sure, we've got content and we've got site, and that's really important. We know, and there's principles around the search engine, but this is back to build relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why it takes time, because it takes time to build trust.
Yes.
That's. I'm going to give Martin 2 brilliants here in one. Hang on. Usually don't give away more than one, but he mentioned something that's been alluded to before, but I think it's very important to underscore, even though we're talking about negatives or myths right now, just to say this positive of not to underestimate the value of relationships that you build. That's a longer-term strategy. It's harder to do, but as David said, the harder things are the ones that pay off, and the value of that, we're seeing that more and more, where some of our best business, our best referrals, our best links, all of these things come out of relationship. Sometimes relationship. I just had an experience recently where someone happens to be a journalist, but I've been building a relationship with this particular journalist at a major publication for 2.5 years online. It means just feeding him information from time to time when I see something he thinks will be interesting. And for those 2.5 years, other than a couple of mentions, you didn't really get anything out of it in terms of direct return. But then recently, one of our major studies we published, we were able to alert him to, and this became a thing for him. He wrote a whole article on it, with links to us, everything, in one of the major business publications in the world. That didn't happen by accident, but it was a 2.5 year cultivation of a relationship. So that's very important. Just from the myth side, I'm going to just reiterate the thing that I said earlier and just repeat it to reinforce it, and that's the myth that you no longer need any technical SEO on your site. And I want to bring it back just to tell you a quick story. Is that one of our clients is one of, I obviously won't say who they are, but they are one of the top 5 highest traffic sites in the world by anybody's measure. And they messed up recently. They messed up just in terms of their technical SEO. The site was so complex and so complicated that they created, unintentionally, but they created this huge Gordian knot that became so difficult for Google to get through, for its robots to crawl and understand, that Google just kind of gave up. And they started seeing a massive reduction in traffic. And they called us in, and it was a huge job. It took many, many, many months. It's not completely done to untangle that mess. Frankly, if we'd been there from the beginning, we never would have advised them to do the things that they got them into the mess. But I say it to underscore, here's a huge site, multi-billion-dollar site with all kinds of resources, all kinds of in-house people to work on these things, and they created such a mess that Google couldn't understand their site anymore. So that, just to underscore that you can't afford to ignore those technical issues. Your site has to be basically optimized so that a search engine can understand it, its robots can crawl it properly, can get to the content, can figure out the connections between things. So don't believe anybody that tells you that you don't need to do that anymore.
Good point.
Yeah, that is so true. Now, at SiteSell, every one of our customers is building these extensive content-based websites, and they're all designed to earn revenue. Where do you see search headed in the future, particularly as it relates to these kinds of content-driven sites and online businesses?
Well, search is beginning to do what it was intended to do in the beginning, and it couldn't do very well because the technology wasn't there. And that is, it organizes information in a way that makes sense to the end user in relation to his search query and the intent behind it. So essentially, to boil this down to simplicity, it provides answers which actually make sense and allow us to do things, either to learn something or get something done or buy something if it's a purchasing decision. Which then, if we inverse this, a website that doesn't actually help do that, it won't really surface in search for very much longer, if it surfaces at all. And that's the way that a website needs to be set up. So even if you have a website which has content and it is only intended to sell ads, make money through that, and there are websites like that, well, make sure the content which you have now is not the poor quality, quickly thrown together content that had keywords that would get somebody on the website on the off chance they would see an advert that would appeal and click on it, because that won't happen anymore. If the website itself isn't solid, if it hasn't got high quality, if it's not trusted, if it hasn't got expertise, which no other website has, then it won't be seen. And these websites, which are poor in quality, will eventually die out completely, and we'll never see them again. So the web, which we hoped we would get in the beginning when the web came along, when we all become better and becomes more authentic and authoritative, is actually by degrees beginning to happen.
Shall I add in as well? I think that people, when they start off and they've created the site and they have a product and they're looking at content and then they're starting to build relationships, starting to do the social, starting to do the community building, all of that is good. That's exactly what needs to happen, is build a community around the content. However, you need products that people want to buy. And that's go to the end point to start with. And go and check out the keywords and go and find out what the audience is and go and find out why you are driving people through social into the site and then why you want to be sitting in search in order for people to take the next step. Because the site is the caption of whether it's a newsletter or whether it's like a lead magnet type opt-in thing, which download the PDF. And you've got lots of copy bloggers, I think, are fantastic for understanding how to do this really, really well. But you need a product that people want to buy. Otherwise, you spend all your time doing the social, all of the engagement, you have a great party, but you may not get the results there. And we've been through this with Plus Your Business, and we've got the ship steady now. But I can tell you, it isn't easy moving high volumes of individuals into a place where they go, okay, I'm now willing to take the next step. You're working on percentages, and you're working on more than anything else, in my opinion, because I like community building. You build the relationships. And Hangouts are one of the most effective ways to do that. But I've learned a lot about what I would do differently if I was starting now, and it's different. I mean, I've got some pros and some cons of the journey that we've all been on. But I'd say go back to look at the product first, and then start looking at the content that you're putting out.
Well, gosh dang it, I have to give Martin a third brilliant in one Hangout. This is like, I can't stand it.
You missed him, right?
You normally say what you say normally, just average. But today,
above average.
It's definitely raised your average.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give him that mostly because it's just a perfect segue into what I wanted to give as my tip,
That's good enough.
which is that out of that, yes, you must have a quality product that people will talk about, people get enthused about, because that leads to what I want to say, which is building a brand.
Yeah.
The importance of that. They're one of the most golden things you can have in business altogether, but especially on the web and even in how it affects Google now, is to have a brand that people talk about. I was at MozCon just a couple weeks ago in Seattle, and one of the speakers was showing some really stunning examples of Google autocomplete in search. Autocomplete is when you start to type in a search query and Google gives you this whole drop down of suggested queries that kind of finish out that query, that add words to it. Well, one of the main sources of those, of course, is things that people search frequently. So when you see those suggestions, it means people are searching that a lot. Well, he started showing us some suggestions where you start typing in a certain query, and one of the top suggests after that query is a brand name. So, I'll make something up here, but lubricated widgets, Bing. You start typing that in, and you see the third one down is lubricated widgets brand. That means that a lot of people are searching. When they think of those lubricated widgets, they think of that brand. How powerful is that? And people have noticed, it's been a long-standing thing to notice, it's not new, that big brands, well-known brands, tend to do very well in Google search. And that led people for a long time to, some people to espouse conspiracy theories that Google just gave automatic preference to big brands, or it was because they spent a lot on AdWords or like that. We have no evidence of any of that. It just seems it's much more likely that it's simply the fact that if you have a brand that a lot of people are searching for, it makes sense for Google to rank that brand's content higher. They know already, the signals are there. People want to see that. So whatever you can do to get people talking about your brand, and the Martin suggestion is a huge part of that, to have high-quality products that people really want and that they will talk about and share. That is, that's one of the most valuable things you can do.
It's absolutely right. Now, before we wrap things up, I would like each of you to share what you're working on now and where everyone can find you.
Okay, I'm finishing a book on trust and how it is used in the online environment and how you can actually benefit from it. There'll be more details from that on that in my in Google Plus as soon as I'm allowed to say more. You can find me at davidamerland.com or Google Plus or Twitter at David Amerland.
Great, thanks, Martin.
I am, so two primary things, Plus Your Business. One is the Academy. So we have that as a place to learn really digital marketing. Started off very much focused on Google+, but we've been increasingly reaching out to Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. We have specialist people that come in just about every week, so we have that. And got a new reviews product, which is going to be launching very soon to help small businesses get more customers through the door. And we've got techniques that we're using, and we've got some back-end system that we'll have ready to rock and roll within the next week or two. So that's what I'm working on. You can find me on Google Plus or PlusYourBusiness.com.
And I'm working on two major things right now. One is Eric Enga, who is the CEO of Stone Temple Consulting, and I are working together on a forthcoming book on how social media is used by real social media professionals. And we're doing a series, we're basing it on a series of many interviews with some of the top brands in the world and their social media leads. Some of those interviews you can already see at stonetemple.com. There's many more to come. So that's one thing. I'm also working on my personal content project for the rest of the year is on the humanization of business on the web and social areas. That includes everything from how in-house personal brands can be used to build the brand of a business, to just how businesses can become more human and thus build their brand, the thing that I was just talking about in the previous. As far as finding me, I love to say this these days, just Google Mark Traphagen.
That's fantastic. And that's it for our show today, everyone. I am so thankful for my guests, David, Martin, and Mark, for being so generous with their time and their insights into search. And I'd like to thank each of you in the audience for listening in. I hope you've learned as much as I have. And I hope you've enjoyed this entire SiteSell Presents series. All the recaps and transcripts, including today's by Friday, will be found at sitesell.com/blog. Bye for now.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care.